Are you in the middle of preparing your research proposal or doing your research? If so, I have caught you in exactly the right time. In this video, I will cover some of the common mistakes that I've seen when I mark students' research proposals and dissertations. Hi there, I'm Ken and I teach at 2 UK universities and I run a business guiding international masters and PhD students on their research. Recently, I had an incredibly busy marking period where I assessed about 50 different masters research proposals, dissertations, poster presentations, so on. In this video, I have distilled the top 3 mistakes that I've seen, and I'll discuss what we as markers expect and how you can avoid these common pitfalls. Rationale is often an area of weakness. At the master's and PhD levels, you are working at the forefront of research. You cannot be proposing studies or conduct research that lack value. The purpose of research is straightforward: to solve society's problems. If your study doesn't address a current issue, or if you're producing knowledge that's already available, then there's very little point in conducting that research. Your work needs to have elements of novelty and usefulness. Here are some of the common problems that I've seen in rationales. A student would say, the topic is important, so therefore we need to research it. This argument can be much stronger. There are so many important topics in the world, so why is this one worth researching? Consider the timing of your research, the political climate, societal, academic discourse about the topic. What makes this research important now? For instance, there may be new developments in diabetes management technology, or changes to public health policy, emerging paradigms in sociology, or current problems that you have noticed in your hospital that are new. Perhaps a new health budget has reduced the funds for a certain treatment. Simply noting that the topic is important is not enough. Alternatively, a student may also argue that there isn't any research done in insert a country or population. While research may be lacking in one country, it doesn't necessarily mean that research needs to be done. We expect some level of statistical generalizability in quantitative research, or theoretical generalizability in the case of qualitative research. You need to argue why your country or your population that you have chosen is so different or unique that previous research cannot sufficiently answer your research question. Perhaps there are important cultural differences or demographic uniqueness that affect the barriers, facilitators, outcomes, satisfactions, applicability, or validity of whatever that you're investigating. For example, it might be worth examining vaccine hesitancy in a specific under-researched subculture due to their spiritual beliefs and health superstition. Or perhaps a specific population has a unique diet that exposes them to different foodborne diseases. Highlight these specific elements and argue why other research findings cannot answer your research question. A student may say that there is a lack of research. However, following that line, the student presents 5-10 different research studies about that topic. You're essentially answering your own question and showing that there's no more need to explore the topic. Instead, explain how the research that you have presented is insufficient and why your research or the population that you're studying is different. Finally, there are a lot of students who do systematic reviews or scoping reviews and argue that there is a lack of research, so therefore we need to do a literature review on that topic. This logic is partially flawed. If there is a lack of research, you are already arguing for the need for empirical studies, not literature reviews. Literature reviews are typically done to consolidate, to summarize information, to compare findings, evaluate effectiveness, explore research scope, identify gaps. Different literature reviews have different purposes, and none can work without existing research studies to review. You can potentially argue that we know that there is a lack of research in this area, generally. However, we need to review the literature to identify where that lack actually is and to what degree it is lacking. This is very risky because you might potentially end up with no studies, and therefore you have nothing to present as findings, or you need to craft a very sophisticated argument from a review with no papers. This is particularly difficult to argue. Certain academics will reject the studies because they do not accept that as a rationale for a literature review. There are literature reviews papers with no review papers, which I've linked in the description for your reference. So have a look and see how they manage to argue the rationale of their studies. One crucial aspect that we assess in research is the alignment of the entire research proposal, dissertation, or thesis. All components must be coherent and interconnected. In a proposal, we expect as markers that the literature review would provide a commentary on the current research landscape, including its scopes and any potential gaps in it. This should then inform your research rationale, which in turn should clearly indicate your research objectives, aims, and questions. These research objectives and questions should then guide your choice of research paradigms and methodological considerations, which then inform the methods section. Your data collection and analysis methods need to be directly connected to the objectives as well. Finally, your findings should then link back to your objectives, answer your research questions, and through the discussion, reconnect with the gaps and the available research identified earlier. Now, every element needs to relate to the others. If one component is out of sync, the entire system then falters. For instance, consider a diabetes study examining the relationship between blood glucose levels and foot ulcers. If the data collection includes unrelated demographic information like ethnicity, marital status, for example, it becomes ethically questionable and distracts from the research question. This misalignment results in findings that lack relevance and focus. Another problematic example is a scoping review that aims to evaluate the effectiveness of an intervention. Scoping reviews are not designed to assess or evaluate effectiveness. The mismatched method prevents the research from achieving its aims or answering its research question, regardless of the findings. A literature review is not merely a compilation of sources on the topic. It is a critical analysis where you will need to make a point about the literature that you have reviewed. Students often fall into the trap of presenting a list of paper summaries with no synthesis. This approach is completely unnecessary. If I want to know what these papers are covered, I could have just read the abstracts. What's more valuable here is your synthesis of the research. What are the broad emerging ideas across the studies that you have read? What is the current discourse on the topic? What are the latest arguments in the topic? Why is the topic important? Why is more research needed? And what type of research is needed? That's what you should be conveying in your literature review. As you read the research, identify common themes and ideas that pique your interest, drive your research idea, or support your thought processes. Then consider how to guide your reader from introduction to your research rationale and then the research question. Think of your research as taking the reader on a journey. Tell the story of your research by introducing complex ideas one by one. Start with a general overview of a topic, then guide your reader step by step until you reach your research question. Along the way, present recent research, gaps in knowledge, and your research rationale. So for example, let's say I want to argue for a scoping review on how AI can be used in simulation curriculum for cancer nurses. I will want to start my background on my literature review with an introduction to AI in education and its potential applications. Then I'll connect this to simulation, explaining its importance for cancer nurses and any existing challenges. Next, I will suggest how AI can address these problems, citing research to demonstrate its potential. Finally, I would argue that there's a need to review literature in this area, explaining how it could contribute to our understanding and implementation of AI in simulation for cancer nursing, thus arriving at our scoping review question. The depth of your coverage will depend on your word count. With a smaller word count limit, you'll want to be more concise and get straight to the point. If you have learned something from this video, give it a little like, and if you'd like to see me tackle more issues about academic life and research as an international student, subscribe to my channel. If you have any specific difficulties about your dissertation, drop it in the comments below and I may make a video about it. Research is complex, with no shallow end for you to start with. You must quickly learn to swim in the deep end, or you'll find yourself buried under jargon, theories, and concepts that we use in research. Many students underestimate the research module. Unlike typical content modules where you learn one theory at a time and then apply at the end, research requires extensive learning, reading, and dedication. If you want to learn more about other common research problems, check out my video on why some international students struggle with their research modules and potentially fail research, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!